Hey guys, it's Jessica, and today I want to discuss a movie playing both on HBO Max and in theaters right now. It's called Reminiscence. I like Inception, I like Hugh Jackman, the visuals are good enough. I figured it would be at least an okay watch. So let's go ahead and first discuss the good things happening in Reminiscence. Hugh Jackman's voice is great. That guy could just narrate stuff, or he could do voice acting work for cartoons or I don't know, anything voice acting related. I really enjoyed listening to that man talk. His acting was fine. His acting is most always fine, but his voiceover work is the main selling point to me of this movie. Next, I thought the visuals were cool. Right away, they were giving me a Blade Runner 2049 kind of feel. I started to realize that the movie was spending a lot of time reminding me of other movies that are better than it. Kind of like the Tomorrow War does. Reminiscence keep making me be like,
remember those? Those were great. Come on this modern journey that's like that.
Which is actually kind of hilarious considering the whole movie is about how people prefer nostalgia to living their day-to-day original life. But the visuals, even though they're very interesting, they begin to invoke other movies and it started to make me think that maybe this movie couldn't stand on its own. The visuals would be really striking on the big screen, but for people streaming it at home on HBO Max, I don't know if they're going to be hit the same way or if they're going to be able to enjoy them at the same level. Besides that city that reminded me of Blade Runner, I also love the tank Reminiscence. I thought the whole 3D fiber optic rendering of the memories was really cool. Pretty much any time they were showing memories on that 3D fiber optic screen, I was into it. I thought the movie was very interesting in how it explored addiction. In this case, they explore both addiction with drugs and addiction like seeking the same emotional high or emotional beats and using memory to escape an unpleasant present. I don't think they did as much as they could have with it, and I think there were different ways they could have gone about it that would have been more interesting, but what they did was enough for like a very basic conversation starter. I enjoyed the use of water and its symbolic properties in this movie. So within this movie, the world is flooding for reasons and people are slowly going underwater. And also the technology used to help you relive or recall memories puts you in a water tank. So they do a really good job paralleling people slowly drowning in memory versus drowning out in the real world. And they use the water in different ways. There's like the drowning reference, there's like washing away like a blank slate, forgetting everything else. There's the idea that water can erode things. There's the idea that water could suspend a person and like help them float and buoy along. There's the idea that water can have currents and drive you one way outside of your control. Like just the different ways they use water and visualize water and kind of try to weave it into how memories can be or how living forward in time can be. Specifically with the water, I thought the fact that it could do all of those things at the same time was very interesting. That you need to kind of like negotiate a balance there. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about the meth stuff. And this is all stuff that like I could take or leave, or stuff that I didn't like that I think most of the viewing audience probably would enjoy. The whole film noir detective vibe. One of the things that really invokes the original Blade Runner here is that Hugh Jackman is literally a detective looking for a girl, much the way Harrison Ford was a detective in kind of a grimy future world looking for a girl/robot. I will say that Hugh Jackman is a better, more likable character than Harrison Ford's character. He's less misogynistic, he's less abrasive, and his motivations are more positive. Harrison Ford was like doing it for the money and it was a job and he was very cold fish on it. And Hugh Jackman's portrayal, he loves this woman, he's concerned about her, he wants to protect her and care for her. So that's more relatable. It's easier for an audience to get into that. I think both pieces are pretty misogynistic in different ways, for slightly different reasons, but some of it comes down to the idea that there's just like this big strong man hunting down a woman, and the woman herself lacks character or rights or agency. She might as well just be an object. And that way, of these noir detective movies, the least problematic one is actually The Maltese Falcon, because at least there, the hard-boiled detective is looking for an object instead of looking for a woman who's secretly just a prop to make the story keep going. But like The Maltese Falcon, the pacing here is very draggy. I'm glad my college film professor made me watch The Maltese Falcon. It gave me a really important reference point for detective movies, but I hate it. If you like that kind of pacing, this could be your bag. Reminiscence felt like a 4 or 6 hour watch. It was only 2 hours. Another thing I didn't care for in this movie, but I think is probably more meh than a straight negative, is the whole the future is worse than the past kind of vibe going on. A lot of times I enjoy that. I like a dystopian apocalypse world. I'm actually a big fan of those like grungy, grimy, rebel fight sort of stories, but I don't actually think it works very well in this story. I think it was easy for the director or the producer or the writer to put it this way, but it's not actually as interesting as a world where the future was better than the present/past. I think it would have been a far more compelling story if things were going well in the future, and even where things were good and at their best, and where people's lives were better than it was before, there's still this longing for nostalgia, this desire to live in one's memories, or this idea that your best moment is behind you. Like that to me would have really started to get us into the idea of memory and perception in a way that Inception does. This movie's trying to make a rich versus poor kind of statement, and I just don't think it does that well either. It would have been better if most people are living like this great life or whatever, but there still are some outliers, these other levels of nuance that you could have done if the world had been objectively better in the future than it was in the present or the past. Another thing that was kind of meh for me were the characters. They're fine. That's all I can say about them, really. Like, none of them stood out, even though they're fully rounded characters, and most of, I guess, the 3 of them that they're watching get arcs. None of them were very interesting or compelling. And now let's go ahead and talk about the bad. This movie is incredibly misogynistic, and it's baked into the premise. It's like got that 1950s vibe going on where we've regressed like to an olden times. And I mean, Hugh Jackman doesn't call anyone dames or broads or anything, but it would fit right in. You know, like if you watch a period piece, you kind of expect that, but if you go to see a movie about the future, you don't necessarily expect women's rights to have gone back in time, to see them like singing like show pieces on stages and being in like these prostitution drug rings, and to need like a big strong man to protect them. I don't like any of that. I found it really actively abrasive. And it got to a point where even Hugh Jackman talking about how much he cared about this chick and wanted to protect her and wanted to make sure she was okay, that she had just been a human connection, it started to grate on me as like a big strong He-Man looking out for like the little helpless woman. And even if society collapses and decays in the future, I don't expect it to regress to like this women are tradable goods style. Like, I don't know where that comes from, where people think the second that society collapses, women are going back to being second-class citizens. Like, why would that be the case? And especially in this future world where technology is still here as an equalizer. Another thing is that this movie is incredibly white for being set in Miami and also visiting New Orleans. I probably wouldn't have noticed this in a watch through if I hadn't just come from watching The Irregulars, but I had just finished watching The Irregulars. It has an incredibly diverse cast in Victorian London, and here we are in Miami, in New Orleans. Almost everybody here is very white. The world building in this movie is trash, so Miami is slowly flooding, and it's not really clear why. Is this like some kind of weapon from the war? Is this because of global warming? And then on top of that, why did people stay? Like, the whole issue is that the lower class people are stuck in the floodplains and the high class people are living it up safe and dry. And I don't understand why all of them haven't left. I would be worried about the structural integrity of buildings. I'm surprised that the electricity is working and the generators are working. Like, there's just so many logistical issues with it. Did we force people to stay here? That's kind of implied by this dude in New Orleans. Like, the government is forcing people to stay in certain places, but why? What are people even doing in these flooded cities? Like, I know our main character is selling people memories and nostalgia, but it doesn't make any sense. It is not helped by the costuming here, because people are wearing like these sharp business suits and these very formally detailed dresses and outfits, and that doesn't make any sense when Hugh Jackman's shoes keep falling into like a foot of water. Why is he wearing business loafers? Shouldn't he be wearing some kind of galoshes? I know that's not sexy, but it doesn't make sense. And I think part of this is just that they wanted to use water as symbolism and metaphor. I don't think the back and forth in time thing works for this movie the way the movie thinks it does. Like, the movie is telling us a story out of time while we're hopping through Hugh Jackman and other people's memories. And I get why we are hopping through other people's memories, but it's kind of weird that we didn't just see this in a linear fashion through Hugh Jackman's eyes the first time. I think they did it because it's like trendy and gimmicky, more artistic. Like, as someone who writes and spends a lot of time trying to find the placement and order of different events in my story, I just found it annoying. Like, why am I learning about this now? Why didn't you start the movie here instead of here? And I spent a lot of time making notes about where the right place to start this movie is, which actually leads me right into my next complaint. There are so many more interesting stories happening before this movie started or after. I am way more interested in Hugh Jackman working as an interrogator in the war than I am in Hugh Jackman's business post-war. I want to know more about the war. I'm very curious about it. I am also pretty curious about Hugh Jackman's girlfriend, May. Like, if we had started with her in New Orleans and her, like, slow decay into drug addiction and eventual escape, that is like a way more interesting story. Even the story about what Hugh Jackman's business partner does after Hugh Jackman goes into his memories forever is more interesting than the story I got. Like, if I had to rate Reminiscence, I'd give it like a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I just thought the story itself, thought it was a lot smarter than it was, and thought that it was slick using various techniques that just don't quite come off as successfully as possible. I think it doesn't help that this movie is doing a lot of things that I personally don't like, and in some cases even find offensive. I have been trying to think about the right audience for this movie, and really I think if you like The Maltese Falcon, if you like the original Blade Runner, you might be okay with this movie. The Maltese Falcon is a better movie than this. I don't think Blade Runner is a better movie than this. That's probably a controversial take. It's a toss-up whether I'd rather watch this or Blade Runner 2049. I think Reminiscence is going to run into that issue where, like, the Maltese Falcon and Blade Runner were, like, the first. And Blade Runner specifically has, like, some robot freedom issues that Reminiscence isn't going to benefit from. If you're looking for enjoyable post-apocalyptic dystopian worlds, can I suggest my playlist here? And if you're looking for other sci-fi stories that I've evaluated this year, I've got a playlist here. Please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. I want to know, have you watched Reminiscence? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Tell me in those comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye!